Should teachers be allowed to carry guns in school if they are trained to do so and properly licensed? It has been a hot topic of discussion on our Twitter feed all day. Coming up after the break, we will have a fair and balanced debate on that very issue. In light of the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary, many schools are taking a tough look at their safety policies. One school district in Texas is getting a lot of attention for voting to let teachers carry guns in the classroom. So is it going to keep students safe or actually put them further into harm's way? Here for a fair and balanced debate, our constitutional attorney and radio show host, Mark Levine, and radio show host, Chris Plante. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Happy Easter to you both.
And to you as well. All right, the school district says they had hearings. They had a community group that included law enforcement officers and parents and all kinds of people. They voted for it. It's not going to be every teacher. It will be some teachers that they authorize. Good idea, bad idea, Mark?
I think it's a terrible idea. I want educators to educate. I remember teachers where sometimes a kid would try to stick a tack in their chair. If a teacher has a gun on them, first of all, I want to know where the guns are going to be kept. Is it going to be in a locked filing cabinet? Because a good friend of mine is a teacher in New Orleans, and she had her cabinet broken into, and they stole her computer. I can imagine what happened if there's a gun there. Or is it going to be on their persons? That's even more scary to me. Teachers have to put their backs to students. They lean over, they help them with their math test, and people, kids pass notes behind teachers' back. If a gun is sticking out there, I just think that's going to be a real incentive, I think, for kids to play tricks and try to grab that gun.
So, Chris, should they be gun-free zones?
No. I mean, we've seen what gun-free zones do. Sandy Hook was a gun-free zone. Virginia Tech was a gun-free zone. The Aurora, Colorado movie theater was actually a gun-free zone. I don't know how many times we need to go through this gun-free zone thing before we realize that we should declare banks to be gun-free zones so nobody robs them. I mean, it doesn't make any sense on the face of it. It's obvious that gun-free zones don't work. A lot of states have moved on beyond the debate that we're having in Washington to the common sense conclusion, which is essentially the Wayne LaPierre position that the only thing that stops a bad person with a gun is a good person with a gun. It's why the president has men with guns around him, why banks have guns, why office buildings have armed security, and to suggest that all of these places are more valuable than schools is pretty outrageous. And you're suggesting that the kids are going to be grabbing the guns and shooting the place up?
No.
I don't know where you went to school.
If you've got a seventh grader and you've got a kid with a teacher with their back to the kid and a gun sticking out, I think that's a temptation for our kids. Look, it doesn't have to be a gun-free zone. I think there's a compromise in between. I'm okay with security guards having guns. They're trained to not, give their back to a kid. They're trained to look out for it. They're not looking to educate. They've got things to do. I think you could stop a bad guy with a gun without a good guy with a gun. One reason is background checks, which you've been trying to say insane people shouldn't have guns. Wayne LaPierre used to support them. Now he's against them.
Well, that's a HIPAA issue.
And we did just talk about this. I mean, as a former labor and employment lawyer, I know that you can't give out a lot of mental health information, if any, on people. So how is that going to wind up in the background check system?
Well, in some cases, you actually have someone who's been adjudicated insane, like you had in the case of the Tucson shooter.
But what about these cases where a lot of these recent shooters, people said they were off, I was scared of them, they were maybe kicked out of class, but never adjudicated? How does it work?
Well, I mean, where you set the threshold for mental illness is complicated given the number of people and kids that are medicated these days in record numbers. It's amazing how many people have some contact with the mental health system, and you can't include everyone in that. So it does have to be something that's adjudicated. But back to the idea that kids are going to be grabbing guns from teachers. You go through training.
Kid grab a piece of candy from a teacher?
You go through training. Do you own firearms? Have you had any firearms training at all?
I have not.
Because you get firearms training. You don't walk around with your guns sticking out your back and turn your back to people. You're trained for such things. And if you're fine with a security guard with a gun, then you should be fine. Then you should be fine with a teacher or administrator
Where would you have
who
them
volunteers. Look, different people carry guns in different places.
If the principal has a locked rifle in their safe, so something's going to happen.
Not exactly.
But that's very different from a teacher in the classroom.
That's like saying the police should have their guns locked in the trunk of their car where they're conveniently located so that the moment you need them, you can just say, hang on a minute, I've got to go get my gun. I mean, it's like Barney Fife with one bullet in his pocket.
Where would you have the teacher?
I've got a bullet in my pocket.
Where would you have the teacher carry their gun?
That's up to the teacher, honestly. You take concealed carry courses, and there are a lot of different types of holsters, generally inside your belt line. It depends. With women, it's different.
Will the children know that the gun's there?
Not generally. No, the best concealed carry is carry that's concealed.
All right, I want to talk about an issue, though, that has come up here, because in some of these school districts in Texas, they've elected not to do this, but several of them have. And in some of the cases, it's an issue of being in a very rural area where the response time from local police or sheriff is 20, 30 minutes. Right. Would that sway you at all, Mark?
I think you could have a security guard. I think you could have police officers there. You could have, like I said, I'm even okay with a principal. They lock it up in the office, the teacher sounds an alarm, and the principal or someone who has had training comes running. But the idea of a teacher carrying on their person a gun, kids play pranks, and a lot of 5th graders, 6th graders don't necessarily know better, and we have kids that get killed with guns every day with accident. I don't want to add to the accident rate. Even in Columbine, an armed guard wasn't able to stop those shooters.
Well, that's true, and police on the streets can't stop every crime, but it's obviously the solution to the problem rather than declaring things to be gun-free zones. And I'm glad to hear that you've moved over, because you're essentially where I am on this, and now we're just haggling over the details. You're fine with a police officer, with a security guard, with a principal. Now, I mean, I had some teachers that would kick both of our butts. You know, Justin Ramp in my high school,
and
Mr. McAvoy.
I've had some elderly teachers that I wouldn't want to have a gun,
sure,
frankly.
but Miss Sheehan isn't going to be the one who volunteers to carry the gun at school. Justin Ramp is, and you know, that, I mean, that's what we're haggling over the details now, because you're fine with responsible adults having guns in schools in order to keep the children safe. The rest is in the details. And most people, what is it? A third of the states now.
Real quick, background checks have kept a million people who shouldn't have guns from owning guns. That's the solution, not a few teachers having guns in the classroom.
Reasonable background checks are perfectly fine.
Glad you disagree with the NRA on that.
No, I don't. No, the NRA isn't against background checks.
Of course they are.
No, we got to let it go. I think it's more about what happens with those background chechecks and recording purchases, but that's another debate, and we'll have you back for that. You guys are going to hug, I know, when you leave here.
Happy Easter.
We love it when we play guns together. All right. All right, we have been asking you at home, and you've been just as heated about this topic on arming teachers. Wayne writes this: absolutely, somebody should be packing some retaliatory firepower instead of everyone being sitting ducks. Big Dog disagrees, saying no, but there should be a police officer at each school. Another viewer writes that they have mixed feelings. I have guns and want students safe, but I'm not sure an armed teacher is best. Mike says this: yes, teachers and other school employees who have proper training should be allowed to, but not forced. Thank you so much for sharing. You sound a lot like the debate we just had here. All right.